Today there are so many pressures for kids to have more followers, more friends. With that, it makes it such an easy combo for a predator to slide in.
You've got young children that have access to technology that are building profiles. They're looking for companionship. They're looking for friendship. It makes it so simple for somebody to communicate with our children. We're going to go get you no matter what walk of life you are, what career you chose, what political position you hold. If you had a friend on your friends list and you didn't know their parents or haven't been in their home or we haven't met them, then how are they friends of yours? Before we even get started, parents are either buying kids new cell phones, they're allowing them back onto their social media site, our investigation's gone. If you see something, say something. And the first thing in his internet history was, how do you hide a party from your parents?
What would you tell a predator?
We will catch you. We're gonna throw the book at you.
Brock here with Parent ProTech. Welcome back to the Tech Translator, the podcast where we break down the digital world so families, educators, communities can navigate it with confidence. Today's guest is someone on the front lines of the fight to protect kids online. Constable Ryan Gable, thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. And you lead the Montgomery County Precinct 3 Constable's Office here in the Woodlands, Texas, where you and your team have a nationally recognized Internet Crimes Against Children unit.
Yes.
Your work has taken down predators, disrupted exploitation rings, and saved real kids from real harm. And in an age where threats evolve quicker, faster than ever, where parents can't even keep up, AI-generated child abuse imagery, online grooming, and digital sting operations, your insight is more important than ever. So really appreciate your time today. And appreciate Sage, your son, for helping make it all possible. Starting out, what led you into law enforcement and ultimately to focus on, crimes against children?
What led me into law enforcement, my dad was in law enforcement a long time, and he had a dream to be a police officer, and so as I grew up, we didn't have a closeness, a good father and son closeness. We did when I was younger. As I grew older, we grew apart, and I probably did some things that I shouldn't have done as a young man, and ultimately was in a relationship with my high school sweetheart. We've been married 30 years now.
Amazing.
So we've been together a long time. And things that developed in a young age, I had to end up moving out early to provide a place for us to live, and that led to needing a job. Not that I didn't have a job. I was going to school. I was in college, and I was actually turning wrenches. I was a mechanic. And so ultimately wanted to develop more of a relationship with my dad. I wanted to kind of carve my own way, so I wanted to understand his, thought about why I always wanted to be a police officer, because I didn't. And I went into the police academy at 20 years old.
Wow.
I had to ask my dad to buy my gun and bullets to shoot and qualify with, and he helped me do that. And ultimately went into the police academy and graduated at 21, and during the police academy really enjoyed it. And after the police academy, I just started putting out applications. One of the things that I wanted to do was go to work for an agency that my dad didn't work for, so that I could do my own thing. And once I started the academy, learned a little bit about what it all meant, and then getting a job and going to work in law enforcement, I really enjoyed doing it and being part of it. And at the time, us police officers, we say, the ones that always want to do it, go into it to protect and serve. And I guess that I always had that in mind, specific to family and friends and things, but it wasn't specific to the public. And so starting out very young in law enforcement, I had an opportunity to do just about most of the gamut of what you can do in a law enforcement organization, and it kind of carved away to what we're here talking about today. But that's how I got into it.
Amazing.
Starting out, really enjoyed it, and it made a good career out of it.
Absolutely. Just for our audience as we dive in, Montgomery County Precinct 3 and the Constable's office, what do y'all do differently than other law enforcement organizations?
So it's a question we get asked a lot, and one of the things that we probably need to talk about is ultimately, I spent 20 years in Harris County law enforcement. I left Harris County law enforcement as a captain and ran for office to be the elected constable here in Montgomery County Precinct 3. I took office in August of 2012. And so one of the questions we get asked a lot is, how are you different from the sheriff's office? How are you different from, the police organizations out there like Houston Police Department, Dallas, things like that? So your sheriff's offices and your constable offices are county law enforcement departments, and ultimately we receive our funding through Commissioner's Court of a county that oversees the county budget. And one of the unique things about a constable's office, and to really answer your question, we basically do a lot of the same functions. The Texas Constitution is what put in place the Texas Sheriff and the Texas Constable and put us into elected positions. Both elected positions are 4-year terms, and so we're elected in by the people. We have an opportunity to build our organization to what our constituents or the public deserves that we serve. Coming from Harris County to Montgomery County law enforcement, Harris County is vast, it's hugely populated, so the busyness is just outstanding. I mean, it's your call to call, your investigation to investigation, and so coming into Montgomery County, where I had, as a captain, had a huge number of personnel that worked for me, I came into Montgomery County, even though we grew up right here in Spring, Texas our entire lives, and I knew a lot of the Montgomery County law enforcement, I didn't understand the difference just driving across the county line from how busy it was to not how busy it was here. And so ultimately, coming into a fresh slate of law enforcement with a lot of things that I was able to do in Harris County and create and build and ultimately into computer crimes is what kind of we tailored the department up here to do. So I wanted to give the constituents of Precinct 3 and Montgomery County a law enforcement agency they deserve to protect them.
Yes, sir. Well, and you mentioned the internet component, so I think it's good time to jump into that. Internet crimes against children, we'll shorten it for ICAC going forward. So what is the ICAC unit, and what types of cases do they investigate?
So ICAC is the Internet Crimes Against Children's Task Force. It's made up of task forces across the United States, and I don't really know exactly how many task forces there are today, somewhere in the high 60s, low 70s, and that's specific to the agencies that participate in the task force, from local agencies to federal law enforcement organizations. And I would say probably 2003, 2004, I was trying to think about this morning before we got started, but we were one of the first agencies in the state of Texas to really start investigating computer crimes.
Wow.
So I was a lieutenant at the time, a sergeant, a very close friend of mine who is the expert in computer crimes against children. We were in my office and we received technology that we were capable of watching the worldly web, okay? And at the time, we decided to turn it on for the very first time to see what it would capture. And so I wish I could remember really the dates, but it was quite a long time ago, early 2000s, and it captured just a huge amount of pin drops of people that we were able to capture IP addresses, and the technology was specific to looking at geographical areas. And when we turned it on, we looked at the geographical area of all of Texas. And both of us were just shocked at what we saw. And so that really began our, division number one, but two, to really dive into how we can go after these predators and what they were really doing, because in today's times, you have so much information provided to you, whereas prior to early 2000s, if a child was being assaulted or groomed for specific things, families didn't talk about it. It wasn't spoken about it. And prior to the technology we see today, it was usually a family member or somebody that one trusted that was doing the grooming or assaulting and things like that. So it was really a new thing for law enforcement. It was really in the beginning stages of chasing these predators.
Well, and I'm sure between 2003 to what we see today, it's massively changed too. Can you speak to some of that?
So it has changed just hugely, and kind of some of the things that I mentioned were how we try and keep up with these predators. And so where you had proxy sites back then, where if you were new technology, and one of the things that I would like to say is a lot of the folks in writing, technology, writing programs, it's in your DNA. I mean, these, from young people to adults that understand it, it's like a carpenter, it's like a welder, somebody that, it's kind of ingrained in them. They understand it, where a lot of people don't. Normal people can't build a cabinet and it be square and look great, and a lot of people can't write code, so that has evolved, and it's become easier for people, predators, to pinpoint, target our youth and go after people. So that has evolved massively. And technology, from where we didn't have encryption, I mentioned proxy sites, and when I was talking about it being in your DNA, some of the cases I could recall in the very beginning were one of the major school districts. We were getting complaints that students were coming in talking about another student accessing pornography on the web. Well, the web was locked down. So how was a child accessing pornography through school computers? And they were backdooring specific websites to get on the dark web. And at the time, the dark web was very new as well. So we had to figure out how that was happening, had to teach ourselves how to do it, how to investigate those types of crimes. And today, you can just log on to an application and meet a child and start the grooming process.
Yeah, well, and on that today, what do you see as kind of common tactics that predators are using to go after children?
It's a very clear tactic, and it's they start with our youth. They talk to our youth. They find targets that are easily groomed, and what I mean by that is for parents that monitor social sites and their children's online activities, from gaming sites to applications to just game console units, things like that, it's quite difficult because you have parents involved. Well, a lot of times you don't have parents involved, and you've got young children that have access to technology that are building profiles, and they're looking for companionship, they're looking for friendship, and as these predators locate these folks, these children online, they're telling them what they want to hear. They become friends with them. They become friends with their friends groups, and ultimately it's somebody that they continue to build up a trust with. And once there's a little bit of that trust built up, that they move in and they start asking for risque photos. They start asking for things that they can use against these kids. And it's as simple as, hey, I'll tell your mom that you sent me a nude photo, or hey, I'll share your nude photo with your friends group, things like that. And so those are how easy it is to become victim, and very much a grooming tactic is how it works.
Got it. Well, and kind of sidestepping a little bit, we always talk about family engagement being so important, but we also in some cases battle this like myth of oh, my kid would never do that, or we go to the nice school, live in the nicest neighborhood, that would never happen to us. What would you say to a parent saying that?
So any social site that our children have access to has a component in it that puts you in a geographical area with one another. It it promotes meeting strangers. So regardless of your background, where you live, how involved you are, it makes it so simple for somebody to communicate with our children. For example, the VR headsets. We were working a case here a while back. A grown man, 10-year-old little girl built a house together through a VR headset. The grown man was capable of opening up her outside camera system to where he could view not only her but could view the home and things like that. So regardless of who you are, where you live, and how connected you are, you have these folks that are just trying so hard to get in with our kiddos for bad reasons.
Wow. Kind of shifting gears a little bit, how have online crimes against children changed with social media, gaming, and now AI? So kind of leaning into the AI component.
I would say that AI is helpful to both sides, the predator and the law enforcement. And AI is extremely new technology to all of us. And some of the things that we do to utilize AI is we have the opportunities to, our personas of detectives, we can make detectives look like kids, things like that. That's how we utilize AI technology versus the predator side. It just gives them the opportunity to be able to say the things or create conversation with children that our children want to hear, if that makes sense. So AI is helpful on both sides. It is new technology. I think that as we look forward to specific things that AI could be more helpful on, it could be helpful to conversational pieces that it picks up specific words and things. And so with as new as AI is, we've been experimenting with specific pieces of it for a number of years to give us threat information through geographical locations. For example, the president's coming to town. We want to watch this area for words of threats coming up or things like that. So we've been able to use technology programs and stuff that watch that, and that could be utilized for conversation pieces with our personas to predators.
Yeah.
And I think that what we're talking about today is more specific to those types of crimes versus the people that are sharing, promoting, selling, and like trafficking child pornography. So quite different in in bad guys, I guess you could say criminals.
Yes. Yes. And what do you say, and hopefully it doesn't get you in trouble for answering, but what do you say the laws are keeping up with the rapidly changing technology?
It won't get me in trouble. It's something that we try and are very involved in, and as the predators find loopholes in the laws, we try and wrap up those loopholes through legislative changes, things like that. There have been good laws that have come about. For example, if you solicit a child today and one of the things that's very important when talking to predators is you have to age verify, okay? So you want a predator to know that you're 13 or 12 or 10, and that has to be documented, okay? So you're going to say, hey, I'm 14. Yes, I'm okay with that. You sure? Because I'm 14 and you're 40. And at that point, you've age verified. I'm 14 years old and you're still open to communicating with me. So as those things happen, when you start to ask specific things in a sexual manner, there's laws out there now. If I respond in a sexual manner, we can charge you with that without me sending you specific nude photos, risque photos, things like that. So there are laws that are keeping up. There are loopholes that we're getting wrapped up. But it's something that we're always watching. How can we strengthen this law? Things like that. Now, being the elected constable, I have a division that does it, and this is what they do every day. And I mean, they're communicating with predators every day. So as far as all the specifics and the loopholes today, it'd be tough for me to recall.
Got it. And you've got 4 detectives on the ICAC?
I do.
Amazing. And kind of shifting to specific ICAC in action, can you walk us through the recent sting involving the Conroe ISD teacher from earlier this year?
So it's a ongoing investigation. I can't give a whole lot of details, but specific to what's out there in the public, we had a fake persona as a young boy on an application out there, a communication platform, and we were reached out to, and we were specifically spoken to, and it led to his arrest. So it was an adult male reaching out to a child for specific purposes, grooming, sexual purposes, all of these things that led to his arrest.
Got it. In a separate event, can you give some intel on the case involving the FBI analyst and AI-generated child abuse material?
Yes, so we've been back and forth on the different types of predators. So the FBI analyst would be more specific to really the use of technology, the expertise in technology, the different types of platforms that we take part in, file sharing platforms, whereas the teacher was more application specific to a dating type website, known for children, to more of file sharing platforms online, dark web, things like that. So the proactive investigations would be solicitation type cases. We put ourselves out there as children, and so our detectives are acting as fake personas on different platforms, applications, online, chat rooms, things like that. And we bring these people, these predators, to us, and so they're actually soliciting something from us, usually sexual in nature, and they come to meet us, and we call them travelers. So we take them down at a given site, and they're going to be all walks of life, from business folks to blue-collar workers to, just the full spectrum of anybody. Then you've got the real technical people who are very in depth in computers, the types of technology where they can promote, they can sell, they can house child pornography.
Got it.
So they usually have the money available to house significant computer systems, technology, and they're the ones that we're always trying to figure out how to keep up with, or the encryption on different things. Without going into specifics or the specific types of file sharing programs, that's how we came across the FBI agent.
Got it. Well, and even this morning there was an article about a journalist that got caught with child sexual abuse material. And so with this, and also with such a public view of it, how do you maintain public trust when people in power are involved, whether at the school or the FBI example or journalism?
So really good question, and I would say that there's just bad apples, bad people in everything that we do today. And so when you talk about teachers, law enforcement officers, FBI agents, our church leaders, things like that have certainly been caught in these types of stings and investigations, I think that you just hold them accountable, and you cross your T's and dot your I's when you handle those types of investigations, specifically because of who they are and the access they have to people and the public's trust. And so the good people that are out there that they ultimately represent, I mean, local law enforcement, we've arrested cops before, and FBI agents and preachers and teachers, and so I think we want the public to know that we're going to go get you no matter what walk of life you are, what career you chose, what political position you hold. We're going to do what we can to catch you, hold you accountable, and we're going to throw the book at you.
Good. Well, and has your work impacted the way that you parent?
So, yes, of course, and we have both, I think, grown up, and what I mean by that is so I mentioned earlier that I would go around the state and talk about the dangers of social media and things, and as I would write, author the presentations and stuff to teach our youth, our parents, things like that. Unfortunately for our kiddos, my wife and our kids would sit through presentations before I'd get up and talk to groups of people. But specifically, we had to think about providing them cell phones and how are we going to navigate those things. Sage, our son, he was coming along. Both of us worked, so there were areas where outside of where he got old enough to be able to get off the bus and things, they didn't have really smartphones or anything like that at that particular time in his youth and things. They had a Firefly, phone, things like that, where you could mash a button and call your mom or dad or the police. Yep. But at the end of the day, and I'll tell you a really funny story here in a minute, but we were very involved in what they looked at, what kind of technology they had, and parental controls that turned off specific times at night. But that's when those parental controls came about, because prior to that, they weren't there, but either were the platforms for communication and stuff. So
Sure.
One of the funny stories I was going to tell you specific to this and the things that we're able to see in law enforcement was our son. He was part, you would be chosen by, I guess, like a principal or your coach or something to be part of a program that looked after other kids your age and for doing the right things. And so the school, he was a ninth grader. They brought me in and they wanted me to speak to these specific youth, the ones that were chosen to kind of lead and watch the kids and stuff. And so when I would do that, I would literally go in and say who has an iPhone, and they'd raise their hand, and who has a Droid phone. And I'd tell them that, hey, if you have those things and you have stuff on your phone that you're not proud of, us law enforcement can see that if we wanted to, okay? We would talk about those things. Well, a few days later, I mean, like right after that specific talk to these kids, I get a call from the principal, and the principal's like, hey, Constable, are you guys going on a cruise? And I'm like, well, yeah, how do you know? And he's like, is there any way you could come in and talk to me? And I said, sure. So I went over and I talked to the principal of Sage's ninth grade year. And he's like, I don't know if you know this, but there's supposed to be a really big party at your house. And so I said, hey, can we call Sage in? And so we brought Sage in, and first thing I did was take his phone from him. And when he came around the corner and saw my eyes, and I saw his eyes, I had a hard time not laughing or smiling. I had to be the tough dad. So I took his phone, and I told him we were going to download his phone and see what was on it and things. And he probably doesn't know this today, but I'm going to tell it. We never did, but we looked through his internet history and stuff. And the first thing in his internet history was, how do you hide a party from your parents? Okay. And it's like, close the blinds, keep the music down so your neighbors don't hear it and stuff. And we're able to kind of thwart a big party at our house. But
so you think?
Well, that particular time we did. There were other times we didn't, which led to surveillance cameras at our house.
Got it.
Sage ended up moving out and starting his own stuff when he was 18, so it didn't last long for us. We're super proud of him, but that's kind of a funny story on technology and what we saw and how that worked back then. And that wasn't too long ago.
No, and I think we always talk about is kind of combining like the parental controls and all that, but also how crucial having a conversation with your kid, with your child about online safety and what's out there being maybe even more crucial than that. Would you have any recommendations for families kind of to help them in taking that step to have these important, deeper conversations with their children?
There are certainly youth out there that have shared their stories. They go from light to real heavy. And I would, as parents, look for those things on YouTube as youth sharing their stories with have been groomed or have become a victim of a predator, things like that. And I think is what that does is open your eyes, and it opens our youth's eyes. For example, one of the young people that I would talk about, she shared her story before she ended up committing suicide. Okay, and it was a pretty significant story, and it went on for a number of years as she was a little girl. And she ended up moving schools and towns, and this particular predator would ultimately find her and would share her pictures with teachers and coaches and friends and things. So anywhere she went, it ultimately haunted her. And I'm not saying we as parents need to share things like that with our kids, but there are examples out there after examples like that certainly hit home and certainly have the tendency that, hey, this happened off of Snapchat. This happened off of Instagram. This happened off of Facebook. You know, common sites that our folks use every single day, all day into the night. They're laying in bed scrolling their phones and things, and ultimately it just is an open atmosphere for predators to target our children. So I would certainly share stories like that. I would certainly audit friends lists. One of the things that we did when our kids were younger, and more of our daughter's side of things, because as she was coming about is when applications were becoming more popular. And so if you had a friend on your friends list and you didn't know their parents or haven't been in their home or we haven't met them, then how are they friends of yours? And so we would have those conversations all the time. They know Jane, and Jane's a good friend, and so forth and so on. Well, that's how our predators are so good at grooming our kiddos. So, well, let's talk to Jane's parents. So call them on the phone, and I want to know if Jane's parents knows John Doe. And we would do those exercises quite often. And so it led to them knowing we'd be looking, and them knowing that, hey, I didn't really know this John Doe person. So it was kind of both ends.
Yeah, no, I love that. Because I feel like today there are so many pressures for kids to have more followers, more friends. And with that, it makes it such an easy combo for a predator to slide in.
It really does. And in today's times with the platforms, and if you have any hobby of posting or being part of the social sites frequently, you have such a friend following that it becomes so difficult to audit or talk about, and you just have to assume that, hey, you've got predators as your friends that are watching you and talking about metadata and things like that, and what predators can get off of a photo if you and your friends are at the mall taking pictures and things. So those are all of the things that we try and communicate to our young people.
What are some signs that families can look out for that their child might be in danger?
So obviously changes in behaviors. These are really good questions, but there's such vast answers to them, because you have the majority of children that are doing what they do. They go to school, things like that. You have children that are in broken homes that are seeking specific companionships and friends. It's pretty tough to answer that specific question, because if you've got people picking your kids up that are strangers, if they're runaways, if they are out at all hours of the night, who's monitoring those things? To the majority of the kids, they don't get to go out at night. They've got to be up for school, things like that. So you have the majority, and then you have the group that may be looking at for trafficking purposes, where you're going to see specific signs from huge behavior swings to maybe tattooing for, they're being marked by their traffickers, drug-related concerns, things like that. Any change in behavior where a child wants to be on technology, and that's another very important point I would make. You take your phone away from your child today, a friend's going to give them one, they're going to get on computers at school, they're going to have access back to their social sites. So be cognizant of that. Know that the addiction to technology is real, and figure out how to work around that with your child, because even working through that can push your child away. And so it's a really tough thing to navigate.
If you could give one piece of advice to families around tech and keeping their kids safe online, what would that be?
Participate in their technology, participate in their social media, be the mom and dad out there, watch who likes their photos, make a comment, that was a great day as a family, you know, something along those lines to where you have participation in what they're doing. You're seeing what they're doing. And with as much as our children have access to, it's a full-time job. So that's what I would say. Be a part of it in some manner, if that makes sense.
Totally. Well, and on the flip side, too, though, a lot of these topics around online safety, privacy, applies for families, too. And so do you oftentimes see predators taking information from a mom or dad's Facebook page and then using that to kind of get closer to the child?
Absolutely. So anything that a predator can do to groom a child to gain a trust is going to happen. Now, I think that as long as you have an opportunity to be observant of who's commenting and liking, you certainly can't stop the hidden messaging, the instant messaging, things like that. But you can certainly do an overview of that. You can certainly bring your young ones in and look at their messaging. You can certainly have passwords and access to their social media. You pay the phone bill, you pay for the phones, and it floors me because we have to tell our parents. So it's so common for us to not only communicate with predators, but for parents to come in and say predators are communicating with our children. So we have to assume their social media. We take their phones. We forensically look at the technology, whether it's an iPad, a cell phone, computer, things like that. And we have to, it could take a couple hours, could take days to do these things. And before we even get started, parents are either buying kids new cell phones, they're allowing them back onto their social media sites, and our investigation's gone at that point.
How can people in different communities support the work and the mission of the ICAC unit?
Great question. And being part of the Internet Crimes Against Children's Task Force provides specific grant funding, things like that. Now, to utilize the technology we do to watch the worldly web, to communicate with predators, to forensically download cell phones, gain access into this stuff, is hugely expensive. So being part of the task force helps a lot, but we talked about how I got into this and bringing it into Montgomery County. We were utilizing, that was one of the platforms I ran on to come into Montgomery County as the elected official, was we're going to investigate these types of crimes, okay? And so we ended up, as the transition from Harris County to my elected role, we had 2 really bad criminals on the hook, and we were investigating them out of our computer crimes division in Harris County and ended up making those arrests. But a very close friend of mine, he was able to provide funding for the beginnings of all the technology we needed, the huge amounts of money it takes to send an investigator to train, the licensing we have to have, things like that. And he provided all of the funding for our agency to get started doing those types of investigations here in Montgomery County. So wow. I'm glad you asked that question. We can take donations. us being a county organization, those donations have to go through Commissioner's Court, so they have to say, we approve, that donation to go to the ICAC for Constable Gable's office and things like that. But the huge part of that is the types of task forces we're involved in offer grant funding, offer training, offer, the tools for us to do it. And that's the great thing about being part of ICAC.
In 30 seconds or less, what would you tell a child just getting on technology, just getting a phone?
I would tell a child now, believing that the child could understand what I was trying to say, basically tell the child to use the phone for what the phone's purpose is, calling your mother, calling a sister or a brother if you want to talk to them or need them. Stay off of the social sites because they're dangerous areas. And if something dangerous happens, if you see something, say something. Tell your mom or dad that something worries you so that they can get involved.
Love that.
Yeah.
What would you tell a predator?
That our technology is getting better every day. You don't know who you're communicating with out there. That we know that this is really in your DNA. So your real predators can't help themselves. And if you haven't been caught yet, we will catch you.
You listen to the news. There's a lot of tough stuff happening around the world, around the country, around the county. But what gives you hope?
Well, I tell you what, I think what really gives me hope is just what I feel about the Lord, and that the Lord's protection over us all, and just a continual opportunity to, as a parent, communicate with your family and do the best you can do to look out for others. We have a saying that if you see something, say something. So I think that's very important, and I just, if you're asking me that specific to our predators looking to harm our children, I think that as the predators get better, we get better, and I think that I hope and pray that the people that are doing these investigations every day, because this is some of the toughest work you could imagine, and with the things that you guys are doing in that realm to look out, protecting our youth, as our investigators view this material daily, thousands upon thousands of images and videos and things. My hope is that they stay strong, that they come to us when they need help, and we provide that help as often as we can. We have regiments involved in people communicating with our investigators, but at the end of the day, that the people are able to do what they do to protect our children against these predators.
Yes, sir. We don't thank you enough and your team enough for all the work that you do. So we're grateful for this time to sit down with you on a busy morning, but can't thank you enough for all the blood, sweat, tears that y'all do to keep our community safe and our kids safe. So thank you.
Well, thank you for coming out and letting me share a little bit about what we do. And it really goes back to where I sit today. I kind of get to drive the boat, and they all do the work. And so just getting here to be able to share a little bit about the work that we do, that they do every day, is just, it's really great. So I really appreciate you guys asking me to take part today.